Welcome to my review of Shock Troopers for the Neo Geo AES. But most of this will also apply to the arcade version, which is also the MVS version. Neo Geo MVS is the actual arcade Neo Geo. The reason I like playing this on the Neo Geo AES, which is the home system for Neo Geo. Neo Geo had a home system, as many know. And the good thing about playing that version of the game on emulation is it has limited continues. So I like playing a lot of the arcade games on the AES version so that I only have usually 3 to 4 continues to beat the game. It makes it more of a challenge because if you play it in the arcade or if you play the arcade version, you have unlimited continues usually in these games. And you can just pretty much, put in credits to win, whether you're paying for them or, virtual credits on an emulator. But either way, it removes the challenge unless you set your own credit limitations, which I don't really like to do, but I will do sometimes if I really like an arcade game. Sometimes I'll try to do it on 1cc or low credits, but it's very uncommon for me. I've only done a few 1cc runs of arcade games, so I don't do it too often. But I like that it gives you 3 or 4 continues. It makes it challenging like a console game would be. Now, the one difference is with these arcade games is they don't have 1-ups and stuff like that, like a lot of console games would have. So you can't earn extra lives or anything like that. And that's common with a lot of these AES games, which, it kind of makes them feel like they're not really designed for home console use since, you're just limited to whatever continues and lives you have, and you can't get any 1-ups. And, the reason for that, of course, is that arcade games, a lot of them don't really like to give you 1-ups because they want to keep you, paying to play. So it does, carry some of that with it. But with all that said, this is, probably the best game I've ever played in this style from this era. You know what I mean? I mean, now we have twin stick shooters and stuff on modern systems, and I'm sure I could, dig up some of those and probably, even like some of those better than this because some of those games are amazing that came out in more modern times. But I would put this at the top compared to games like Bloody Wolf, Mercs, and, other overhead shooters. Of course, the Cory Warriors I always thought were shitty games, even the arcade versions, especially the NES ports. But, so those aren't even competitors for me. But this blows away games like Mercs and Bloody Wolf, which were some of my favorite overhead run-and-gun type shooters of that time. It's not a real common style of game. Like, there wasn't tons of these types of games that really resonated with me as like top contenders, like really good games, but I loved Mercs. And I did a tutorial of that of both of the modes and playthrough, of course, as well as Bloody Wolf I played through a long time ago on the TurboGrafx and arcade versions. Awesome game. But this really blows those games away. I mean, not only the visuals, but just the gameplay. There's a lot more enemies on screen. There's a lot of enemy variety, a nice variety of weapons, tons of explosions, just nonstop action. It also plays better because there's a roll button so you can use to dodge attacks, which gives you a lot more mobility than you had in those older games. So, there's a lot of improvements to this game. And on top of all that, the game, it's almost like 3 games in one. Because here you see me doing my playthrough on the easy route, which is what I beat the game on, which I suppose is probably supposed to be the easier levels. I think they're a little bit easier. But you can also there's a harder route and then there's a hardest route or something like that. So there's, you can take the hardest path, the middle path, or the easiest. So that's 3 different playthroughs right there because in order to do that, you can only choose one level. You can, whenever you take a path, you don't get a chance to play the other levels in that playthrough. You have to just kind of commit to that path. Now, I think you may be able to switch the path midway and select a different stage, but most of the time, if you're trying to play if you want to, play on a different difficulty, the way you're going to do that is choose a path like easy, medium, or hard path. And that's the best way, really, I think, to change the difficulty. Though there is a difficulty selection as well in the beginning, so maybe that's a little confusing, but I think that affects the overall difficulty of the game either way. So you can also just select the difficulty at the beginning, but on top of that, there's like a second difficulty option, basically by choosing which path you want to take through the game. So with those 3 paths, you're looking at a pretty nice amount of stages overall in the game and a lot of replay value. I think, if I remember right, you also can choose from several different characters. I think 3 different characters, as you see here. And each one of them plays a little bit differently. I think they may have some different weapons and things like that to use. So actually, and I think they have different speeds. I think the smaller characters are faster and more nimble, but may not have as much powerful attacks. But I don't remember the exact details of that, since it has been a while. I don't remember if I made a tutorial of my easy mode playthrough, but I know that I have the playthrough posted up on the channel. So I will drop the links to whatever I have available on the channel. Whatever I have posted up, I'll link that, related to this game. But yeah, overall, I think that this game is awesome. I fucking loved it. I also enjoyed Shock Troopers 2 when I worked on that. I may have also beaten that, but I don't remember that being nearly as good as this. I like this one a lot better. And Shock Troopers 3, I think, might have been the worst one. It was still a decent game. Still a pretty good game, but I think the third one was the one I liked the least. So I would recommend, if you are, looking into these Shock Trooper games, or if you like overhead shooters, start with the first one, because I think the first one is the best. At least to me, I enjoyed it the most. I like the art style the best, and I thought it played the best. I just enjoyed it more than the other ones, and I don't remember exactly why I didn't enjoy the other ones as much, but I just remember enjoying this first one the most. So because of that, this game really stands on top for me as far as these type of games. I mean, it's a great game, obviously, in general as well, but I mean, if you're looking for these type of games specifically, you would definitely want to check this out, and you probably already know about this game. But if you're a newer player, you may have not been around when these games came out, and I was around when these games came out, but I couldn't play them because I didn't have a Neo Geo, and I didn't go to the arcades that much either. So, and even if I did, there's a good chance I would have never saw this in the arcade. So, now I can access it, of course, on emulation. I'm accessing a lot of games I didn't really have access to when I was younger. So, now I probably didn't, I think I probably saw ads for this game and stuff. But remember, I'm looking at a magazine with still pictures, most likely. It's not the same, because we didn't have internet back then. So, I may have known of this game, but I wouldn't have really known much about it probably, unless I saw it in an arcade. But I don't really remember seeing this one. So, even being around when these games came out doesn't mean that I got to experience them. So, either way, it's really an awesome game. And this is the final boss, as I do show in a lot of these older games. I do show final bosses because I think it gives a good idea of the game. Final boss is usually a good representation of a game. It kind of gives you an idea of how the game ties things off. But remember, there's two other paths, the hard and medium path, and they may have different endings. I'm not sure about that because, like I said, I only played through on the easy path anyway. I don't know if it was the easy mode that I played through on, but it was the easy path. And I was down to my last lives, as you can see. But what I really love about playing on AES mode, on an emulator, sometimes you got to set the emulator to AES mode, and it can be a pain in the ass to set up. I had a lot of trouble setting it up to get the AES mode to play out. Because a lot of times these games will play in MVS mode, which is the arcade version, which means you just pay to win. Especially if you're playing this on MAME. It's going to be pay to win. But, if you don't want to worry about trying to get it to work on AES style, then, just limit your credits like this game does. Give yourself the same amount of continues, which I believe it's 4 credits. So just put 4 coins in, 4 virtual coins, and just play it that way if you want the same experience. It's probably going to be pretty similar, though the default difficulty is probably going to be closer to the MVS difficulty, which is, I think, more like what the arcade difficulty is. So you may have to go into the dip switches and set it down to an easier setting to replicate this. So you may not get the exact difficulty setting, but it's probably going to be similar. So you can play around with that if you're unable to get AES to work. But either way, I really do recommend playing this game any way you can, whether it be the arcade version or AES. I prefer AES for the penalties. But you can always make your own rules with arcade games and have fun with it that way. You don't need the game to set the limits for you. You can set your own limits and beat games that way too. So overall, I'm going to give this game an 8.5 out of 10. I would consider this the best of these style games for that time. Of course, when comparing older games to modern games, it is hard to give a number review because some of these games are so different, and certain games have improved so much on these formulas. Like The Ascent is an amazing recent game that came out that has RPG elements with this type of game. And, there's just so many different types of games now. But I would say that this stands at the top. For its time period, I think this is the best shooter in this style. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.